there's a lot of throughout emerging markets and frontier markets, there's a lot of these microgrid operators. Yet also use the example, like for example in Myanmar, these small factories, for example, or et cetera. And so they're very fragmented, and the idea and the vision is to kind of consolidate them through upgradation of kind of the front end infrastructure, a common back end, and then also combine that with finance, right? Low cost finance that you might be able to bring in from places like Japan, for example. It's essentially creating a grid of microgrids, or a utility of microgrids. Would you say that's along those lines, or?
Yeah. So I guess the analogy is kind of like Uber or Airbnb, where we want to build a utility without having to own all the generational assets. It's a little bit different because we will strive to indirectly own the distribution assets. But the idea is that we would go into, let's say, a mini grid operator and invest money. If the estimated cost of upgrading their distribution network is X, we would invest X into the company, take an equity stake, and have them use the money we invested to then pay for the upgrade of the distribution network. As far as the capacity in terms of generation, we can crowdsource that from third parties, or in the beginning, if we have to, we'll put it in ourselves and finance it either with debt or equity. But the real idea here is to beef up the distribution side and then be able to use software to do this efficiently at a much higher level, rather than right now where each mini grid is kind of custom built. And it's small, and so it's not really economically feasible for somebody to build out a completely, a tricked out system, so to speak. It just economically not feasible. Whereas if we're targeting a much broader market, we can amortize that cost, and as a typical kind of Silicon Valley type of startup mentality. So we'll go and invest that up front and build that out, and we'll also invest in the company, in the existing operators, to take a stake and help them upgrade their distribution assets. But then hopefully with that, you've got a better view into customer demand. And when that happens, then you can provide more stability, or more kind of, you can minimize the risk for any new entrants to come in who want to invest in capacity, because a lot of these guys are really good at building capacity, but they're not good at getting customers. And for them, I mean, one of the problems we saw in Africa especially was you had a lot of these mini grid companies that would, the people were really good at building utility scale solar plants, and they would come in and they would build a beautiful solar array, and all the electronics worked great, but then they found out that they had over-spec'd the system for the local demand. And then they had to spend a lot of time and effort educating the local customers on why it is that they should buy, an electric rice cooker or a TV or a fan or whatnot. And they got bogged down in hawking appliances when their specialty was really designing and building generation assets. And so the idea here is, if we go in and help them sell just to the existing customer, that then gaining new customers is a marginal cost because you're already up and running. So extending your existing mini grid footprint another 50 meters in whatever, north or south or east or west, and then pulling in new customers, you can do that incrementally. So you're able to manage the risk better. And if you're able to do that, you can also then hopefully attract the capacity guys, so that you can say, well, with, let's say, 1 megawatt of power, we have this many customers and we're running short on capacity. If you install, and attach to our mini grid and provide power, you'll get this many customers. So it's much safer for you to make that investment. So again, this is all speculative at this point. It's still really early days, and I'm sure we're going to find out the hard way that a lot of this is wishful thinking. But That's what makes us entrepreneurs.